Hello, everyone. This is the Offsider podcast. I am your host, John Mosman. You know, I decided some time ago that I would definitely work on making a better podcast. And I end up making, now this is my third, and some might think I'm crazy, but I realize I can't just talk about a couple of different things, because I have a vast interest in a lot. So I thought, well, I've got one on politics, I've got one on religion and culture, so I might as well do another podcast on something that I am very, very much involved in as a sports fan. I love sports. Sports, I think, in a lot of ways embodies a lot of things of the values that I think make America great, that make people great. And by sports, we have some kind of logical catalyst for determining something. For example, I can say right now to you that with his rookie season not counting, which has been his best season to date, you take that out, Robert Griffith III, RG3, he has been terrible. He is probably the worst, one of the worst prospects, and one of the worst draft picks. And it's not because he didn't have talent. I think he did. Did he have the kind of talent that Andrew Luck did? Well, we're seeing that he doesn't have the same kind of talent that Andrew Luck did. Although, to Andrew Luck's credit, he's been able to have an offensive line that was pretty much intact since the days of Peyton Manning there in Indianapolis, with the subtraction of a couple of people, including Jeff Saturday, who did retire a couple of years ago. But he had that. He had the benefit of a coach who already had a system in place for the style of play that Andrew Luck had. And yes, RG3 had Mike Shanahan, who likes those kinds of bootleg, throwing, running players, people like John Elway, who's probably the best at that, with a very close second being someone like a Warren Moon or a Randall Cunningham, and probably right now I would put people that would fit in that system, people like Russell Wilson, and most certainly in Green Bay. My brain just went. It just went the whole. And Aaron Rodgers. So, with that said, what can be said? Well, I can tell you a couple of things that can be said. I can tell you that for whatever reason, RG3 and the Redskins have just not been a great mix. And despite having someone like Mike Shanahan, whose offensive playing style and coaching was similar to something of RG3's talent, I guess the next question has to be, was he really as good as we thought he was? I think there were certain things that he definitely did that no one was expecting, and that he obviously had some talent. But his injury showed us something, and him being injury prone ever since has shown us that he doesn't have what it takes to last. And now you add all the things that have happened, his recent Twitter issue, you have things that he has said in the past. He's talking like he's somebody who's a first starter. And he was. But between his injury and between the fact that he has made an enemy out of the coach, Jay Gruden, what can be expected? C'est la vie, right? Anyways, I wanted to talk to you about what this podcast is about, The Offsider with me. It's a sports podcast that will talk about some of the issues. I'm going to mostly talk about football because football, college football, professional football, with a close second of baseball, are really the sports that matter the most. College basketball and even professional basketball are only good when they're playoffs. And I guess some people could say the same thing about baseball, but there's some things involved in baseball that make me love baseball. With all that said, I listen to sports radio as much as I do normal talk radio, and I've got opinions on these things. So, and I really wanted to talk about the fact that what's been happening in Washington. Because it's not just the Washington Redskins who have just been a disaster and a joke. This is a team that should have been, by this time, with everything that we were told in the same draft of Andrew Luck that they got with RG3, and now their new guy in charge, Kirk Cousins, who was drafted after RG3 and has been there, is that they just aren't showing the kind of potential they've had. And part of it has been they haven't got themselves a good passing offense. They don't have the offensive line they need, and they don't, quite frankly, have the weapons on the receiver slot. The best, probably, offensive weapon they have is Alfred Morris, and he hasn't been as productive as he was, especially that first year that RG3 was drafted. So what do you say about that situation? What do you say to the Washington Redskins fans? And of course, you take on the fact that the Washington Redskins themselves have been facing a bit of a public image disaster, given the fact that for the last couple of years, there have been many groups out there trying to remove Redskins, and we're not going to go into that. But there's just no love for Redskin Nation right now. There's no love for what's going on with that football team, and it's a disaster. And they should be able to take advantage of the fact that the NFC East has been probably, I would say it's probably been the worst league, one of them. If not number one, at least number two, tied with the AFC East. The East just sucks. I mean, when you think about everything that's happened with the Dallas Cowboys and the fact that they still can't get it together, and even though there are signs that this offseason that they have been working hard to putting a good thing together, when you watch some of these preseason games, you still see some missing elements of that game. And you know what? With the talent they have with Tony Romo, with the kind of guys like Jason Witten and with Des Bryant, I know that they lost their key running back that they had for a couple of years that went to Philadelphia. But now, where do they go? They have been a disaster. The Philadelphia Eagles, although I do like some of the things that Chip Kelly has been able to do, and I think he has put pieces together, right? He has put pieces together to make things work for him in Philadelphia. If we were to take any kind of constructive, positive thinking from what's happened in Philadelphia, we can definitely say that he has put the pieces in that maybe in a couple of years they can turn it around, but they're going to be out of it for a couple of years. And then you've had the Giants, who have, ever since that miraculous Super Bowl win against the Patriots a few years back have been nothing. Eli Manning has been a huge disappointment. Now, I will say that when he is hot, but he hasn't been. Now, he does show promise, and that's why I'm actually going to say, I'm going to surprise you all by predicting that the New York Giants are going to be the NFC East winners this year. But, this is a league that's really poor in its competition. And you would think that a team like the Washington Redskins, which are going to put up another meaningless year of maybe, if they're lucky, 8-8, 7-9, are going to show themselves to be another unproductive year. And something has to be said. Not only do they have to get rid of someone like Jay Gruden. I've never been a Jay Gruden fan, but I definitely think that they have to change everything at every level. But that won't happen until they get rid of the new owner. And unfortunately, Redskin fans, with Snyder being your owner, it's going to be very hard to get those kinds of things. So I really think that without the Redskins getting a new owner, they're not going to get they're not going to get what they need. But you know what? They're not the only Washington team that has started wane, and you talk about a team that had a lot of promise these last couple of years. It's been the Washington Nationals, and we're going to talk about them later on when I come back here in a few minutes. You're listening to the Offsider Podcast. Don't go anywhere. I'm back, and you're listening to the Offsider Podcast. You can find out more information about me and about everything that I've done and am doing by going to my website, johnmosman.net. You can find information, links to all my podcasts. I do other podcasts. If you're interested, you can check those out at my Spreaker account. So we have the situation of the Washington Nationals, and really, if there's been kind of a huge disappointment these last couple of years in baseball, it's been the Nationals. First of all, they draft Steven Strasburg, who has all this promise, all of this potential of being the next kind of Clayton Kershaw type. We know that was something that were promised, that he would be in that kind of same elite level as Clayton Kershaw. And we're just not seeing anything like that. He has been inconsistent, and of course he has also been ridden with some injuries. So I guess you could draw some parallelization between Steven Strasburg and RG3. But with a team that went out and got someone like Bryce Harper, who is probably one of the, if not the best outfielder right now in baseball, and not just from a fielding standpoint, but a hitting standpoint, they've just imploded, and especially in their pitching department. They had a problem last night with the Cardinals. I mean, it was something that they had a good start on, and they've been doing that. They've been doing something where they get a good lead, and then they just lose it deep in the game, late in the game. Uh, and a lot of it is happening because their baseball player, their pitchers on this baseball team have been done. You know, we had Tuesday's game with which was today, which was they had 6 walks from their starter Joe Ross. So, I mean, they're definitely not getting the support they need from this pitching staff. And even if you take Steven Strasburg out of the picture, they're not getting what they need. This is a team that they've put in a lot of great players and a lot of great positions, and now it may look as if they may not, they may they may stumble, um, and I don't know if they'll be able to make some kind of ground on the New York Mets. By the way, if you're hearing that crunching noise, it is the cat. He is eating. So, their losses kept them 6.5 games behind the Mets. And with 31 games left to play, it's just not that they're losing too many games in a late, but it's also how they're losing them. When you consider some of the pitchers that they've had, Casey Janssen, he's also played a major role when you think about the fact that he threw 26 pitches on Monday's loss, and got the first 2 outs out of the ninth without issue, but then he yielded a double and a walk before Brandon Moss, who has been, let's just say, Moss has been exploding for the Cardinals, and Brandon Moss doesn't seem to me to be the elite player that you think. He's not a cargo guy. He's not a Harper. He's not a Yasiel Puig guy. Okay, he's middle of the ground kind of baseball player, but he's been exploding off of them, and he's been taking advantage, and they just can't finish things out. They can't finish games, and when you get to this late of the season, it's just indicative of the fact that the Washington Nationals have just been a complete letdown these last couple of years, and it just seems, I know Strasburg has been hurt, but it just seems that all these things put together, that they just can't bring it together, and it doesn't make sense, because the Nationals, if you look at them on paper, should be the kind of team that is contending with the Cardinals, that should be contending with the Mets, and have not. And so once again, we have an issue where that's why I named this episode Washington Blues, because these teams, of course, ironically, both of them have the color red, have been filling it. When you think about the consistency that's not there on both teams, whether it be the Washington Redskins or whether it be what's happening with the Nationals, I think it should just be of no shock to us that these are two teams that should have done better and have failed to bring things together. And in the end, what makes you a winner is doing what it takes and doing it. I mean, if we see anything from the NFL, we see the reason why someone like Bill Belichick is a genius and probably one of the greatest coaches of all times, definitely has to be the fact that he can take players who may not be in their prime, people like Randy Moss, people like Jabbar Gaffney, take these people who may be not cutting it on the third string on most other teams, and using them to make big plays. When you think about the fact that, especially in the last 15 years, under Belichick, you saw the Patriots send out big time players. They traded away players like Law, and now recently they got rid of, and he's now with the Houston Texans, their defensive guy. And I think that it's important that we consider everything that's happened with how they win teams, how they win games, and how they make teams. And Um, I think that's something that should be considered. I think that's something that has to be thought. Because when you think about all these things, and you think about everything that they've been able to do, um, it's it's really impressive. But what will it take? What would it take for these guys to put something together, whether it be the Redskins or whether it be the Nationals? What would it take for them to put things together and have that kind of consistency? I don't know. But if I was a fan of the Washington um, Redskins or the Nationals, I'd be very upset and I'd be very disappointed because they've got players who should be doing well that aren't. And on top of that, they have key guys that they have put their entire franchise, they've staked their franchises on, who are now injured or are now inconsistent. And that should be something to be considered. I think if you think about anything, we should think about that because, whether you look at that, and by the way, that defensive tackle that I was talking about for the Patriots, who they got rid of that went to Houston, is Vince Wilfork. So I do think that we can think about what is going on here and see that the Redskins are just, or the Nationals, are both two teams that need to get their act together. And it's a sad, unfortunate thing because these are teams that should be doing well. Well, at least the Nationals should be doing well. The Redskins were going to be doing well, and now after the last couple of years, we don't expect them to do well. They've gone, our expectations have gone to the bottom as well as their record, and that's where we got to leave things at. I do got to go. It's been good talking to you, and we will have more. And we'll have more on the podcast. I'll get a schedule going, and we'll get them out there. So thank you for listening.